All right. So as you are diversifying your revenues, it's important to look at all the different places where you could do that and to talk about how you might sell in Amazon in Japan. I'm excited to have on with me John Cant from Rising Sun Commerce to talk about the land of the rising sun, Amazon Japan, because that's not one of the ones people think about right away. So first off, John, thanks for coming on.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me, Kevin.
Yes. John, tell us a little bit about how you got into the whole e-commerce world before we start diving into Japan.
Yeah, sure. So, well, I guess the Japan bit comes first, really. So
okay, let's start with the Japan bit then. Yeah,
which is kind of how the story starts, I guess. So, I lived in Japan from 2005 to 2010.
Okay.
I was working out there as an English teacher in junior high schools, and stuff.
What was that like?
Yeah, I had a very nice time teaching there. It was great. It was, I was the kind of only non-Japanese person at the school, so I was working in like government schools kind of thing. So it was
okay. How did you end up doing that of all things?
Kids are kids. They weren't.
How did you end up doing that?
One step further back.
All right.
I met a Japanese lady when I was living in London. I started getting out with a Japanese lady, and she'd kind of wanted to go back to Japan, and I was a bit bored of my job and fancied a change. So I was like, yeah, I'll go for a year or so, and then it turned to 5, and we got married and stuff. And then
so it worked out.
She's come back. Yeah. So since then she's come back, and we live back in the UK now. We've been living here for 10 years now, I guess. So so that's the precursor to the Amazon Japan side. And then when I moved back to the UK, I didn't really know what I was going to do work-wise next. I was looking at e-commerce. I ended up going into e-commerce, set up a local grocery delivery service with an online platform, so you could buy groceries from all the local shops on my e-commerce platform. So that's
wait. You created your own kind of like Thrive Cart or whatever they call it these days. Maybe that's the wrong one, but like these Instacart maybe is the right one.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's the big one in the US. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I created one of them on a much smaller scale. But
Got it.
In truth, I never really made any money from it, so I decided to knock that on the head after.
You're ahead of your time on that one.
And then. I mean, yeah. If I'd have started it this year, it would have been going gangbusters. I think.
Right, exactly. This would have been the time.
Timing
to do
is
it.
Everything.
Yes.
Yeah. But I'm happy doing what I'm doing now, which is helping brands to sell on Amazon Japan. So the missing piece is after my grocery delivery business kind of fell down, I was doing other e-commerce bits. I met what is now my business partner, Neil. He runs a private label brand on Amazon. He'd been doing that for a few years, and he was looking at where else to sell in the world, other places to start selling his products. He knew that I'd lived in Japan, and Japan was on his radar as one of the countries to start selling in. So I was like, yeah, I can help you sell your products in Japan. So that's kind of how we got started. We went into business to sell his products. Really, and we sold those for sort of 12 months or so, and then the agency work kind of came off the back of our experience of selling his products.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Got it. So basically, he was looking for a way of expanding into other marketplaces, and he wanted to get into Japan because Japan's not that easy to figure out. Like, Canada is pretty straightforward. UK is pretty straightforward as you're expanding off of Amazon in the US. But Japan, like, the letters, like, they don't even look the same. And, because they're not like, English-ish letters. Everything flows differently. You can't even use the tools to figure it out. So how did you decide whether or not it made sense to sell in Japan?
Yeah, so I mean, you're right about the alphabet. So Japanese has
Right.
3 different alphabets. They've each got,
Mm.
I think, 76 characters. Well, no, two of them have the phonetic ones, and then you've got the sort of Chinese style symbols called kanji. And
Hmm.
apparently, you need to know about 2,000 of those to be able to read a newspaper. So yeah,
Oh
it's
wow.
not the simplest of
Hmm.
challenges for when you're learning a new language.
Right.
Um, so, but onto your point about why was Japan on his radar?
Hmm.
So I think Amazon had been showing him adverts in Seller Central about why don't you sell in Japan, kind of thing. It's a
Right.
good opportunity, and they'd been nudging sellers to expand there, because it's Japan's fourth. Sorry, it's Amazon's fourth largest marketplace. So
Hmm.
you've got .com as number one, Germany number two, UK number three, and then Japan is actually the fourth biggest
Mm.
in terms of Amazon marketplaces. Japan is the third biggest economy in the world, I think. It's got a population of 120 million people, so it's a big market, and
Hmm.
it's a very significant market to go at. So that's kind of that's the sort of why I guess you might want
Okay.
to look at
Gotcha.
selling there.
Gotcha.
The other thing that he liked as well is it's next door to his factory in China, relatively speaking. Do you know what I mean?
Right. Right.
It's only
Right. They don't
48
need.
hours on a ship.
Right. Exactly. It's just a quick little boat trip as opposed to going all the way across the Pacific or taking a flight halfway across the world. They're just right there next to each other. So that's
Exactly. So
awesome.
yeah, shipping time, yeah, was really quick.
Yeah. So it's like, all right, we'll have the stuff for sale tomorrow if we put it on the boat today, practically. Uh,
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it was 2 weeks door to door from his factory to being on the shelves in the FBA center in Japan.
right. I was exaggerating there, but some of it is though. Like I'm sure a
Yeah,
lot of the
yeah,
is the getting it out of China and getting it, across customs in Japan, and before you getting it, I'm sure the boat ride's probably the simplest part.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. No, you're exactly right.
Yeah. Okay. So what did you do to get set up there? Like that's the part where there's people are kind of shrouded in mystery because things don't operate the same because you're not using English common law the way you would with, countries like Canada and UK, where at least the laws are kind of they're not the same, but they're kind of on the same chassis. So it's different. And I'm in Japan, so some of this I'm asking for my own personal benefit.
Yeah. So I mean, parts of it are simple, parts of it aren't. So fundamentally, Amazon is the same in Japan. It
Mm-hmm.
works the same way. The interface is the same. Seller Central works the same. The interface is in English as well. So, you don't have Japanese to get an understanding of what's going on Seller Central
Mm-hmm.
portal behind the scenes. So that side of it is relatively, when you're sending in your um, inbound shipments in,
Mm-hmm.
that's all in English, so you don't need any magic skills to be able to do that. Um, where it gets more complex is communicating your message to the customers, and all of that has to be in Japanese. Otherwise, they don't really speak much English in Japan. So yeah,
Right.
all your marketing and customer facing stuff very much has to be in Japanese. Yeah. So
Now, you were a speaker at the Global Empire Summit that I hosted a couple months ago. And one of the things we talked about, or if I recall, was that, like you had said even earlier in this episode, that Japan has three different alphabets. And so there's almost like you have to kind of
yeah,
translate into multiple ones, and just the way people culturally read things is different. So when I went to Japan, Amazon helped me and they're like, oh, we'll translate the listings for you. And the way he phrased it was machine translation with a person checking it. But then later on, he even admitted they weren't the best translations. So describe kind of like what does an optimal listing look like in Japan in terms that like somebody like who has no Japanese knowledge other than now they know there's three different alphabets, like what would be like kind of the optimal as you would describe it to Americans and Brits?
yeah. So I mean, there's as you say about the three different alphabets,
Mm-hmm.
why that's important is from a sort of keyword point of view. So you
Mm-hmm.
can translate your listing, fundamentally that'll be fine just to translate it from a customer point of view. But you might be missing out on search results. You might not be ranking for particular search terms that could be important. So it's a bit like there's kind of a one-to-many relationship in terms of a word. So it could have three variations. That one English word could have three different ways of being written in Japanese. So what we do when we're setting up a list somebody is we've got a sort of process of brainstorming, looking at what competitors or similar products, what words they're using, and then also sort of translating as well from the English, and we kind of list those in what we think are the most important priority order, and then we make sure that these keywords are in the listing in the right priority kind of thing. So
okay. So, is there one of the alphabets that's the most used, or is that product dependent?
No, they're all kind of used interchangeably, depending on the sort of the grammar or the particular word. So yeah, it's kind of hard to explain. But there's like two phonetic alphabets that you can use instead of the kanji as well. So yeah, but they can all be used interchangeably. It's kind of tricky to explain. But
gotcha. So it's not like 70% of the searches are in one alphabet and the rest are in the other. So it could be relatively interchangeable, almost like a third. So you'd be missing out on 2/3 if you didn't have the other two. Is that
exactly? Yeah, okay. Yeah. So there might be like a traditional way to write a word, then there could be like a modern equivalent or a phonetic equivalent kind of thing, and then so you could well be missing out if you've not got it in there in the right format, basically the right alphabet. So
okay. And do you ever see it as like certain types of people are more likely to, like older or younger people, use different alphabets more, or is it? This is more just from my own understanding. I'm not prompting you to go down in a certain direction because I have no idea. I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah, so there's the traditional words that are kanji, that uses the kanji alphabet, and they're maybe more used by older people. And then you have some words that are kind of what's in katakana, which are sometimes like foreign words that have been phonetically translated into Japanese. So I'll give you a specific example of. So we had a client that was selling hairbrushes. So there's two ways that you can write that in Japanese. One is the traditional way the word is in Japanese, and that has a kanji character, and it has a hiragana character of writing that. But then also the term hairbrush, they do sort of use the English style word, which has been phonetically translated, which is like hairbrushy. So,
okay.
That's written in this alphabet called katakana. So there you go. You've got three different ways of writing the kind of thing. That two of them are pronounced the same way. One is pronounced differently, but they're all likely used in the search bar on Amazon. Now, what we found when we were working with this client was that the sort of English equivalent that was actually used much more often on Amazon than the other traditional ways. So we discovered that along the way. Obviously, that affected where we were putting the money into our search terms and stuff like that, and what we were using in the product title, because from a psychological point of view, if somebody's using that term, we want to make sure that we're showing up for that term because it's matching what they're typing in. So,
now, does Amazon know if they're typing in kanji and one of the others that you described? Do they know to show for that? Is their algorithm smart enough to know that, or is it pretty much only if they search in that alphabet that they're going to get results back for that alphabet? It doesn't know, oh, maybe that's not in the listing, but this is what we think people meant.
Yeah, so I mean, that example, if you typed in the equivalent word hairbrushy, that would show products in the hairbrush category, for example. So it's kind of the Amazon relevancy. So I think the way the algorithm works is it's a bit of a sort of catch-all, but it is ranked on relevancy as well. So you want to be, have the most relevant terms in there.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. So bottom line, if you're going to spend the money on, translations or whatever, make sure that the person understands Amazon, but then also understands that there's the 3 alphabets, and so make sure that they're looking up for what are similar products using, like what keywords, right? Since you don't really have the keyword tools, they're having to kind of go in and look and see what are similar products ranking for.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, any Japanese person who's, a decent translator they'll know and understand about the 3 alphabets.
Sure.
Fairly common, nothing super special about that. But where it is different is doing, having the different variations of having the word, different variations on the word within your product listing, so that you are actually making sure that you rank for particular these, umbrella of keywords.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Okay. So let's dive in a little bit now into how do you get started? Because, as you well know, if you want to go into the UK, you got to get a VAT number. If you want to go into Canada, you got to get a GST, HST number. So every country kind of has their own registration or certain requirements. What does that look like for Japan?
So first off, you don't need a Japanese business to be able to sell in Japan. So US businesses, European businesses can all sell on Amazon Japan without needing to set up an office there. So that's the fairly straightforward process. In terms of tax requirements, it's not straightforward, but it's not super complicated either. So you pay.
It's usually that way with taxes.
Yeah. And it does seem to be moving as well. As time goes on. We've seen changes.
Depends on who you talk to.
Yeah. And it's a good question.
Our disclaimer: we're just talking for informational purposes, so nobody please make any decisions on taxes based on what we're talking about.
Exactly, here. I'm no tax attorney, so yeah. So you pay sales tax and import duties when your products arrived, based on the bill of lading kind of thing. Now, historically, as an overseas business, that was it. There was a you get a 2-year period where you're not any taxes as an overseas business, and there's also a threshold of about $80,000 as well. Now, obviously, that's kind of strange from a government perspective. Why should overseas businesses not have to file taxes when local businesses? And I think they're kind of getting onto this. And what we've seen recently is if some of our clients have sent products straight to FBA centres and they've been stopped at customs, then if the bill on their invoice that they've sent was particularly low, the customs officials have been looking on Amazon to see what these products are retailing for and trying to match up. So and sort of charging tax based on what they can see on Amazon rather than what declaring.
Really? Because that's counterintuitive to everywhere else.
Yeah. No, I mean it's a very strange situation all around. I mean, when other clients use a third party logistics sort of provider first, and if they send them to a warehouse first and then on to FBA, then they don't get checked as thoroughly as if they go into FBA. And this is something that we've seen over the last few months. It's very recent, and it's all kind of a bit of a grey area, really. Because I mean,
as most taxes
are strange, but this is what seems to be happening over recent months. So yeah, but yeah, officially you don't need to file any taxes for 2 years when you start selling in Japan as an overseas business.
Okay. How do the taxes work there? Is it added on top or included in the selling price? Like added on top like in the US or included like in Europe?
So there's a tick box in the portal that says
Mm-hmm.
I'm not valid. I don't need to pay taxes here. So you click that button, and then you're not. It's not added on top, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Oh, gotcha. So then is it technically after the 2-year tax holiday, or you have to have 80,000, or is it whichever comes first?
It's you think it's 2 years and then 80,000. So it's like whichever comes last kind of thing. So you get
whichever comes last. Okay, good. So I knock on wood, I'm still compliant. Yeah, gotcha. Okay, interesting. Yeah, so one of the things you had said, and I need to take you up on this at the summit, was I should send you a couple of my listings to take a look at, because I have a feeling my translations, being the fact somebody at Amazon who was involved in translating them said they weren't the best translations, so I could see how a well translated one might do better. So I haven't quite hit either of those thresholds yet. So I was like, okay, good. But actually, I've been in there for more than 2 years, but I haven't hit the 80,000 US-ish threshold in Japan.
You're fine then.
Yeah. But, the thing of it is to think about, like, if you can add on additional sales on top of your US sales, it's gravy. So out of curiosity, what... And I know it depends, but what do you kind of see as like a general range of, compared to US sales, people see in Japan? Like, what percentage of their US sales do people often tell you?
So we see about between 10 and 20%, I'd say. So
okay.
The biggest, or the easiest way to compare is with the UK. So if you're already selling on Amazon UK, then I'd expect to do similar sales in Japan. Again,
really
depending on the category, but
okay.
Fundamentally speaking, UK and Japan sales are
okay. What kind of products tend to do well, and what kind of products maybe might not work in Japan because cultural things?
Yeah, so the sort of safe bets are homeware products and sports and outdoors are probably the two sort of easiest categories to sell. There's no particular compliance requirements around those.
But like people culturally use them. So if you're selling lacrosse balls, you'd be okay.
Maybe not lacrosse balls.
That's probably an obscure one, even outside of the US.
Yeah, soccer balls, rugby balls would be fine.
Think of like an international type sport.
Baseball, baseball.
Right. Football helmets might not work well. But...
Yeah, no, exactly. But you wouldn't sell many of them in the UK.
Right. True.
So cycling equipment, that type of thing, general fitness equipment, homeware. So there'd be the sort of top two categories on my list. In terms of another big category is sort of cosmetics, but the thing that puts people off that is the compliance requirements around it. So the Ministry of Health kind of thing are quite strict, and a lot of the product testing that's been done if you've got certification done for the US, for the FDA, or for Europe, it's not valid for Japan, and you need to get things retested. And it's not too bad, but it's not straightforward either, the process for that. So I think that's what puts some sellers off.
Well, let's talk in kind of broad strokes, generalities. And that was one of the things I learned quickly when I started launching in Japan, was that how you get things into the country, there's a couple of different, as I recall, there was a couple of different ways of doing it. I don't remember the exact what they were called, but basically almost another company has to vouch for you to get in, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly. So when you're importing the products, you need someone or some entity to be responsible for accepting the goods into Japan. So there's two variations on that. One is called an importer of record. The other is called attorney customs procedure. Now, everybody I know uses the importer of record version because it's easier, and they have it doesn't matter which port your products arrive at, they can accept them. With attorney customs procedure, it's more regional, so that you need a particular company in a particular region to do that. So if you put your products on the ship and instead of going to Yokohama, it arrives in Osaka, then you'd need a different company responsible. So, yeah.
Okay.
So
now, do you just get to choose which one you want to do, or some type of products require one or the other?
Exactly. So a bit of both. So if there's compliance requirements, food and drink products, cosmetics products, any sort of health-related products, then you need someone with a license to import those products as part of the process. If it's
is that ACP
product,
the attorney?
I know that would be importer of record as well. But
really? Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. So what about Sorry, go ahead.
If it's a simple product, like a chair or something like that doesn't have any compliance requirements, any legislation, then you can get a general company to act as the importer of record for them, and they don't need any licenses or anything like that. They don't need any special privileges to be able to do that.
Then is there a reason to need the attorney ACP, or just do the importer of record whenever in doubt?
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, as far as I know, everybody just does importer of record, and shipping companies, some of them offer it as a service as part of their package. So if they're taking responsibility for the whole shipping process, then they'll include that in that service for you. Some of them don't have the resources to be able to do it in Japan, in which case you need to have your own importer of record or ACP separately.
Okay. So one of the things I learned too is that if you had anything that was like touching food or drink, it was at a higher tier. Maybe that's the licensing that you were talking about. So like, if you had like a fork, because that touches the food, that's a different requirement than, say, if you had placemats. Maybe I'm using a bad example.
Exactly. Yes. No. You're exactly right. So for stuff that goes in your mouth, touches your mouth, the requirements for that and the product testing around those types of products are very strict, and it's the same as if it's food products. So you need to, when your Ministry of Health, I think it is, take some, they'll maybe take 5 or 6 as a sample and product test them and make sure that everything that you say they're made from is actually true. So yeah, you're right that is true. Yeah,
and that's that was one of the things I thought was a little bit different about Japan. Was, I mean, I it's always good to understand everyone's rules and stuff. So you want to make sure you talk to somebody before you just start shipping stuff in. Like, exactly, wait, get turned around at the border because it doesn't have the right stuff. Because a lot of times in like English common law world, we kind of think of what you ingest as being that higher level. But there, to your point, if it touches the mouth, a glass, a fork, something like that, then they're going to scrutinize it a little bit more. And one of the things to keep in mind for folks is, what I've come to learn with countries is oftentimes where there's a higher threshold to get in, that keeps a lot of your competition out. So if there's a good amount of potential people buying it, and so, being a large marketplace, that's a good sign. And because, Japan has more people and is a larger marketplace than Canada. And I think Canada is a no-brainer for people. So this is definitely one that maybe just takes a little bit more work, or you need somebody to help you with it. That Japan's definitely one to look into. So once you're up and running, like, are people doing PPC? Like, how does that get managed?
Yes. Again, the Amazon advertising sort of works the same way as it does elsewhere. You can set up auto ads, which is what we sort of did when we first, rewind the clock back when we first started selling. You can set up auto ads, and you can go through and you can make database decisions if you want to. So it's possible to manage it yourself if you've got thresholds in your head. Keyword has had, I don't know, 20 clicks and it's not made a sale. Okay, I'm going to kill it. So you don't necessarily need to be able to speak Japanese to be able to manage your campaigns. they have the same campaigns structure as they do elsewhere in the world. You know, sponsored products, sponsored brand ads. Yeah, it's all pretty much the same.
Yeah, it's just, and this is also for me, like if you're talking about German, you got to use the same philosophy here of, unless you have someone that understands the language doing it for you, it's 100% data focused, and not like we all have a tendency to have these kind of emotional reactions to, well, I think if I just, keep throwing money at that keyword in English, it's going to, eventually convert, because I feel good about it.
Yeah.
But then it never does, or whatever the case is. We've all probably been guilty of that. Whereas when you're in another language, you got to just go with what the numbers are telling you. Now, for those who are, watching this and like saying, okay, is Japan, like, is it a new marketplace? Like, how long has Japan been around?
Yeah, it opened in '99, I think. It's the oldest. So, and it was. I'd say it's been a steady rise. It's not been as quick as the US took off and but it's been growing steadily over the years. The other big e-commerce in Japan that people might have heard of is Rakuten, which I think bought Play.com a few years ago. So Rakuten was the sort of behemoth in Japan that was accounting for most of e-commerce transactions, but Japan has been steadily creeping up, and they're about, I think they have a similar market. So
okay,
yeah.
Now, would you recommend folks, if they've already got their stuff in an FBA warehouse in Japan, would it make sense to also sell their goods on Rakuten as well, or is it that's kind of frowned upon to like use FBA inventory for Rakuten orders?
Where Rakuten differs is they make it trickier for overseas sellers to use their platform. So you need a business registered in Japan, or
okay.
And I think there's certain circumstances where US sellers can sell Rakuten, but I know for us Brits, we're not allowed to sell on Rakuten as an overseas business. You need to go through a Japanese company, sort of third-party company, or you need to set an office in Japan or a subsidiary in Japan, kind of thing. So there's a few extra hoops to jump through. Setting up your product store page and stuff on Rakuten as well is a bit more complex than it is on Amazon. So it costs, the setup fees are a bit higher basically to get going on Rakuten than they are on Amazon, and less familiar as well, which is why we sort of focus on our resources on Amazon.
Well, it's one of those things that, like, for as much as we all that sell on Amazon complain about Amazon and Amazon seller support, they really do it better than all the other platforms. So, a lot of times we're comparing it to like, our own expectations of how things should be. But it's like, once you start going into other non-Amazon marketplaces and you're like, oh my gosh, this is impossible. Realize just how good of a system Amazon has. And that, the frustrations are much more magnified elsewhere.
Exactly. Yeah, I think one of the reasons that Amazon has been steadily catching up with Rakuten is because they're making it easier for international sellers to sell on the platform. So, that's creating more choice of products for the Japanese consumers. It's probably helping drive the price down to some degree as well, perhaps. So I think it's partly why Amazon's been doing so well in Japan over recent years.
Gotcha. All right. So if somebody's listening to this and they're saying, does it make sense for me to do it or not? Like, what would be kind of like that first step to figure out if Japan makes sense for them and their business?
Yes. I mean, fundamentally, it probably does, unless you're in a category. First step would be to, have a look around on Amazon Japan, get Google Translate out, whatever your main keyword search terms are, use Google Translate, type them in, see what comes up. Are there similar products selling to yours? Do they look like they're selling well? If you've got Keeper works in Japan, so you can kind of see the sales history of a product.
Oh, really? Because that must be the only tool I'm aware of that works in Japan.
Yeah, there are not many tools do work in Japan, but Keeper does. So yeah, that is a good option for doing research.
Okay. Interesting. So basically, just start looking, see if similar products are up there, because it would make sense if they at least had a halfway decent BSR. Should people what kind of BSRs should people be looking at over there?
Yeah, I mean the category setup is not quite the same, so yeah, I don't know what a good BS. Yeah, it depends on the category as well. I don't know. Sorry,
that's true. I guess that depends here
again.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, you can go off the number of reviews that a product has as well. In fact, yeah. So I guess there are a number of little data points that you can look at to sort of piece together. Does it have its own specific category kind of thing, or subcategory? So if you're selling a product that it doesn't have any sort of obvious category that it fits into, that normally for us is a bit of a red flag that it maybe not the right type of product.
Gotcha.
So back to your lacrosse balls.
Right. Probably a bad example.
A particular category. And but if baseball is a particular category, then that probably is a goer kind of thing. So.
Oh, gotcha. So I had a question there. I forgot what it was. But anyway, so let's just say somebody's, saying, okay, I want to invest into going into Japan, but it makes no sense. If they wanted to reach out to you and follow you and, maybe get some more information, where would they go?
Sure. Yeah. So we got the website, ransomcommerce.com. So yeah, head on over to that, and we do little market research reports. So if somebody looks at Amazon Japan and they think, oh, it's a bit intimidating kind of thing, then we've got a market research report that we can do for you. So yeah. They normally cost $150, but if anybody wants one doing, I'm happy to do it for half price if they mention Kevin Sanderson.
They heard you on Maximizing E-commerce. Okay.
Exactly, yeah. Mention your name, Kevin, and they can have a half price discount for one of those for sure.
Well, that's very generous.
We don't have any specific system set up, so just drop me an email as part of the process, and I'll, yeah.
All right, that's very generous. So mention Kevin or Maximizing E-commerce to get half off of a market research report.
Yeah.
That's very generous of you. Thank you. I wasn't expecting that. Just jotting down a little note here for the show notes. All right. So this was great. So I definitely learned a few things, and I had seen your presentation at the Global Empire Summit, so I kind of knew a little bit going into it. And I'm already selling in Japan, but every time I talk to you, John, I feel like it's a educational experience, and I learn more about Japanese culture and the potential of selling over there. And I think the language and just the lack of helium-10 Jungle Scout doesn't work over there scares a lot of people off. But oftentimes, if you do the things others won't do, you get the results others can't have. And I would say learn from my lesson, and don't let someone just machine translate it and quote unquote have a person proofread it. Get somebody to actually translate it for you. So all good stuff. So appreciate this, John.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks for having us, Kevin. Good to chat.
Thanks.